right, starting. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Cool. Welcome to ProductTank London, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are super excited to have the full audience here today. Also, thank you to everyone who is joining us online. It's always fun to see where you're joining from, so please let us know in the comments as well. Cool. So for those of you who haven't attended our events before, ProductTank is a meetup for product people and by product people. And it's pretty cool how ProductTank started in London about 10-15 years ago, and now it's spread across to so many different cities around the world. So anytime you're traveling, please feel free to check out our website for a local meetup close to where you go. There are multiple ways how you can get involved with the community. So the first one is you can speak at one of our product events. So if you're interested, if you have a topic in mind, please reach out to one of the team organizers. They're wearing a ProductTank t-shirt, and let us know that you are willing to do it. You can also host or sponsor a ProductTank event. So it's always pretty cool when you have a nice office. You can invite a bunch of product people over and just have fun and discuss different topics. So please let us know if you're interested, and then we'll let you know the details. You can also write for our Mind the Product blog. So if you're interested, please check out the website. And finally, please join the free community that we have at mindtheproduct.com/join. It's an amazing community of people from all over the world, and it's absolutely free. So make sure you do it. We're also super excited to announce that we are looking for new team members for our local ProductTank team. So if you want to help us organize one of these events in the future, please scan the QR code and register your interest, and then we'll let you know the details soon as well. Also, if you have any questions about what we do, how we organize events, things like that, reach out to me or one of the organizers as well. Cool. We would like to thank you, our sponsor today, Pendo, for making this event possible today. We'll have Todd speaking about Pendo, what Pendo does, how they do it, how they help companies leverage data to build better products in just a minute. But yeah, I'm sure all of you have heard about Pendo before, and it's an amazing company. We will be using Slido for Q&A today, as always. So throughout the session, feel free to add your questions to it. Scan the QR code now, or also later on as well. We'll have it on the screen. Upvote the questions that we like, help us curate the Q&A at the end. Amazing. So our topic today is leveraging data as a PM. And it's such an important topic for day-to-day life of a PM. And our speakers have prepared so many amazing insights, ideas, examples for you today. So really hope that each of us today can walk out of the session having a couple of ideas that we can all implement in our jobs tomorrow. So hopefully we can make it happen. And on that note, please help me welcome our first speaker, Todd, the CEO of Pendo.
Thank you, Rena. It's great to be here. Good evening. Thanks for having me, and it's great to be here. This is my second, actually, ProductTank London, so it's always great to see a huge crowd here. I'm going the wrong direction. So what does Pendo do? If you have not heard of Pendo, we are a software company that is focused on improving experiences in software. We have a broad platform that really serves product managers with everything from rich product analytics to in-app guidance. Listen is a product focused on qualitative data, ingesting whether it's feature requests or sentiment, and leveraging generative AI to deliver insights on what your customers are asking for. We have Session Replay that helps you watch your customers, like in-app, almost as like sitting beside them. And then last but not least is MPS, which of course is another form of qualitative data or sentiment. But that's what we do, single integrated platform for product managers. And we do have a free product. So if you are working on something small or even something, on a little test project, you're welcome to just try us out and use this and see how it works for you. So then let's jump in. And I want to talk a little bit about how you can leverage data to build a great product. And Pendo, I founded Pendo. So like part of the reason I created the company was that as a product leader, I struggled to get really, really good data. And I found data like incredibly insightful to help steer and guide the product. So a lot of these ideas are just from my past, or just even as a product practitioner, how I think about leveraging data to make better decisions. And I'll start with Morgan Stanley. They're one of our customers. Probably everyone's heard of them. They're a huge global investment bank. And one of the interesting things that happened to them is they had an unexpected churn, like pretty big. My guess it was many millions of dollars. Just poof, customer goes away. And well, that's never a good thing. People are always looking for answers. And what they started to look is that they had a lot of data in their product about how their customers were using it that they were not using to identify signals that would have anticipated and potentially given them an opportunity to prevent that churn from happening. Things like, hey, our really healthy customers, aside from spending more time in the app, they're using these advanced reports. And our unhealthy customers don't know they exist, and they're doing everything in Excel and trying to figure out why they spend so much money on something when they're still using Excel. And that's a really good, really maybe obvious insight to each and every one of us, but they weren't using the data that they have to answer these basic questions. And then the outcomes obviously can be significant for the org. And that, of course, is a kind of a customer retention outcome. But it's just a good example of how data, product data in particular, could be a really good leading indicator of other outcomes in your business. So a few years ago, actually during COVID, I wrote a book on what it means to be product-led. And one of the ways I think about it is product-led organizations really do put the product at the center of the overall customer lifecycle. And each and every department can think about how product can help them do their jobs better. So I just used an example, Morgan Stanley, where it's like a customer success example, where they themselves can leverage product data, they can leverage the product in general to deliver a better experience, to have higher retention. But that's just one example. And in that book, I talk a lot about how one of the foundational bits of being product-led is leveraging data in decision-making. If you don't have a sense of what's going in your product, if you have no data, if you're not using data, if you don't have a baseline, kind of hard to improve things if you don't know what's going on. So like first and foremost, in the first section of my book is all about being data-driven, and a lot of the examples I'm going to pull from that. So yeah, product-led organizations use data to inspire and inform ideas. And one of the great examples that I like to give more recently is who has a Tesla in the room? Anyone? You live in a town where most people don't have cars? Yeah, it's probably a horrible question, isn't it? So apologies. Well, I have one, so not useful to you. But I think one of the things that's interesting about Tesla that I think as a product person, and by the way, there's a lot of product examples around Tesla that are incredibly inspirational as a product manager. But one of the things is this whole full self-driving. Yes, believe it or not, I fully trust this thing to drive me. Usually on highways, less on commuter streets because of bikes, like all the things you can imagine that you'd be scared of. I don't trust it quite there yet. But on a highway, pretty darn safe. And the way it works is you are supposed to put your hand on the wheel at some interval. I have not mastered what the interval is, but it's probably in the second range, not the minutes range. And then every once in a while, it does something that does cause me to like grab the wheel. Sometimes those are scary events. Imagine just like leisurely rolling around on a phone call. Maybe I'm doing a conference call, and all of a sudden I see something, boom, grab the wheel. Scary event. But if you think about it from a product perspective, that's incredible data, because they are leveraging everything that's happening in terms of telemetry information and sensor information and what's happening around us to train a model to get smarter and smarter and smarter. And now they know every single time the model sucks, I grab the wheel. And that is data that comes back that they can look at every sensor, every camera, and hopefully each and every one of us will be grabbing the wheel less, because each and every one of these instances is incredible training for like your products. And I think it's an excellent metaphor for each and every one of us as we're designing product experiences. We all have these situations where our users are using the product and they're kind of stuck, or they have a problem, and they grab the wheel. Maybe they call support, or they email them, or they hit a button somewhere in the corner. And like each one of those moments is a gold mine of data, because trust me, no one wants to grab the wheel. We just want to sit back and relax. But those moments are the ones that really help you iterate your way to product greatness. So if I want to think about data, let's start with why, and I say start with why is because everyone always asks, okay, we have the analytics, you can measure all sorts of things. What do I measure? We'll start with, like, what's your why? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish as an organization? Are you a startup that's trying to get that next run of funding? Are you a huge company that is trying to drive efficiency and growth? Maybe you're public and trying to hit your earnings. Like, each and every one of you is part of an org that has some broader organizational goals, and you obviously have to start there to understand what's relevant to you to measure. When I think of building something, I always think of, like, what's the business case? And I'm not going to sit here and advocate for a 20-page document or even a multi-page document. I mean, I'm actually going to advocate that you just take the time to try to put together a coherent justification for why you're building something. Because I know this, it's very easy to measure the spend on what you're building. You have to take the number of engineers, add their salaries. Like, trust me, that's very well known to your organization. But I would challenge you to think about what is the ROI of this thing? Again, if we know the expense, what are we going to gain from it? Who's it targeting? What pain? What's the desired outcome? And the easy one is this thing generates more revenue. That's obviously if you're building something, it's a new product or something you charge for. That's like kind of a nice thing. But it doesn't always have to be that. I think a lot of product managers are like, oh, this is just a feature of this huge product. How do I measure it? Well, maybe that is a reason that you currently lose deals and you want to increase your competitive win rate. That's something you can measure that does have a financial impact on your business. What if it's something that mitigates risk? Again, retention. Maybe people are complaining about it a lot and you want to reduce number of complaints. So there's got to be something you're doing. Like, why are you building this thing in the first place? Just because you want to? Which I'll get to that. That may be a good reason too. But generally speaking, having a well-defined business case and just putting like a general value on it, even if it's a t-shirt size, to me is a step forward from where you are if you're not doing this. Another framework, and this is SAFE, which I apologize. This is like really, and these are two. I have SAFE, which is this. It's a lot. Looks very scary. And then I have a 60-second business case, which is a bunch of t-shirt sizes. But what I like is in SAFE, and actually I'm not going to talk about the whole thing. But one of the concepts that they introduce is actually stolen from another book. Called like lean product development or something to that effect. I'll butcher the name, but they talk about cost of delay. And I really like this framework for thinking about building things. What is the cost of not shipping this thing to your business? Again, if it's something that's going to generate revenue, it's the lost future revenue of whatever thing that is. But it could be other ways of looking at it. If it's going to reduce cost and drive more efficiency, each month you don't save that money, that accumulates, right? That ultimately becomes that cost of delay over time. Another way of looking at it is, what's the cost of missing your biggest trade show? So your company could be spending millions of dollars on a trade show. They could be flying all these customers in. You have all this PR attention in your company, and your feature misses the press release. Well, then you got to wait a year. That's like a step function cost of delay. You either hit this date and everything's great, and you get the value out of it, or you miss it completely, right? It's another way of thinking of it. But sitting back, because I think we all realize that when you ship something, time actually matters. If folks are in the e-commerce world and you miss the holidays, that's a huge miss on the business, right? I think everyone understands that. If you're in ed tech and you miss start of school, huge issue. If you're in HR tech and you miss open enrollment, huge issue, right? So think about whatever you're building, how important is time? Because then you may be scope may matter a lot less than time, because you just need to get something out there to hit something that's a fixed date that you can't control, but it's relevant to your business and just part of your market. I think it's also important when you're thinking about why to have a point of view. Obviously, Jobs is famous for having a point of view, and I've always said good products are opinionated. Opinionated means when you're using it, because they're going to all operate in a certain way. It's like not having a keyboard. He was very anti-Flash. I think they were always. I think they're still anti-Flash, as far as I realize. But there's just a lot of things that they took strong views on that made their products, and maybe even hobbled in a certain way, but it made it special. And it was a trade-off that was really, really important to you. So I encourage you, when you're thinking about what you want to measure, make sure it's in context of your why. of your point of view. And even at Pendo throughout the years, like we had this rule around, we didn't want to have developers do ostensibly any real work to use our products. So like you drop us in, it just sort of works and collects data. That became a design principle. Even when our competitors had plenty of things a developer could do, I just avoided doing it for years until so many people yelled at me that I eventually succumbed and I built one. And even to this day, people that use our product use it very different than most of the alternatives because we designed it in a certain way from scratch, and that is the best experience that you could have. It's all based on the point of view we have, and we want it to feel that way when you're using that product. And I encourage you to think about when someone's using your product, how do you want them to feel, and what makes it your product that's completely unlike other ones. The other thing when you're trying to think about why is there's a lot of frameworks for like working backwards or thinking about what the customer's thinking. I love empathy maps. They're very useful tools to kind of just try to like obsess over getting in the head of your ICP. I love this Amazon press release thing where like write the press release of what do you want to say at shipment and try to work backwards from that. It's a great framework to think about the why, and that will help govern how you actually measure whatever it is you're resulted. And then what's the job to be done? Like what's your product being hired for? Measure that. Like that's the thing you want to measure. I think jobs to be done, that framework taught us that how you think someone may be using your product may be different than what you're actually anticipating in the first place. So think about all three things, again, as you're trying to inform what you want to measure. And then last, we did a survey of what are your key measures of success, whether it's adoption, usage. And you can see here that, I think being clear on what your primary, secondary, tertiary goals is really, really important. And in each of these cases, like having a strategy, like maybe it's not revenue, maybe it's you really care about retention or adoption. Again, these are proxies for other things, but again, setting your goals and being declarative to your org is really, really important. So look, I mean, I think when I think about you are what you measure, the first thing I usually ask teams is, are you measuring a leading or lagging indicator? And all too often we're measuring lagging indicators. Like, churn's this or revenue's this. That's a lagging indicator. Once it happens, it's done. Like it is done. You can't really affect it. So I really like to focus on what are the leading indicators? What are the things that I can prevent or make changes on if I start seeing it happen? And it could be things like, I mentioned product quality. Product quality is an interesting one. If we start seeing a rise in custom-reported defects, that's going to lead to some bad things. That means our customers are doing our QA for us. Probably isn't a good thing, right? So if that number goes up, or another one I like to use in the quality vein is recurrences. Like, is this something that we had and then we fixed and they're having again? I mean, those are other areas. Regressions, essentially, that's an area that I like to measure because that's an early warning sign if something's broken inside our system. And heck, maybe we just slow down feature delivery to focus on quality because we're shipping things and our customers are finding it. That's not a good thing. And that's going to lead to, retention over time. It's going to lead to revenue over time if we don't fix it now. Things like stickiness. Our customers aren't coming back to our product. If your customers go in your product, don't see what they want, and never come back, it's going to lead to bad things, right? That's an early warning signal. So these things on the right, of course, are leading indicators, and the things on the left are more lagging indicators. There'll be a lot of people, certainly startup world, talk about CAC and LTV. That's a really late stage measure. Like, not much you can do about that. That's like very lagging, and yes, it comes out of your business model, but we have to report on those as metrics, but as product teams, I would focus on things that I can control, that I can change. I can set quarterly goals around it, weekly goals around it even potentially to see if I can make an impact there. Heck, performance. No one likes waiting for things in your software. None of us do. We're impatient as human beings. The longer I wait, the more pissed off I am. I'll go do something else. Maybe I'll go get a snack, and then I'm gone. You just lost me. So like thinking about that is a really good way of looking at leading indicators. Look, I'm a big believer in measuring qual. Feelings do matter in these measures. And look, I put a bunch up here. I put CSAT, simple usability score, you have NPS. I don't care what one you use, but ask people, questions around how satisfied you are, and by and large, you're going to get some pretty good data. Like we could sit here and have a intellectual debate about NPS, but I can guarantee you, if every person responds say they will never recommend you, you have a worse product than the inverse. So I guarantee it. I don't need to do a bunch of math and have an argument about it. Are the questions imperfect, whatever. It is a measure of sentiment, and it's better than no measure. So I would encourage you to use things like that. It's a great way to get another barometer on your product. This is an example I like to use around NPS. This is a dental software. At least in the U.S., dentists are the least happiest profession. Maybe in the U.K. as well. I actually do not know. But this company, unsurprisingly, had a negative NPS score. Again, unhappy people using bad software. It's like a bad recipe, right? So it's going to lead to some negative scores. But when they actually broke it down and they looked at NPS and saw the negative score, what they really observed was actually dentists were fine. It was the hygienists, the people that really use the software and do the work and do all the work in the office. Apparently, the software was not purpose-built for them. So they did a lot of work educating people, investing in them, interviewing what you like, dislike, and they focused just on that one persona and then lifted the overall NPS for the company just by segmenting on that one persona. So it's a really good example of how if you focus and you listen to customers, you can have a positive impact on the business. So turning data into insights. Look, I love these cohort graphs, or some people call them retention graphs. This is a way to look at groups of users. So if you're not familiar with this chart, you're looking on a month-by-month basis, everyone who starts using your product or a feature within your product or an area within your product within that month, and then what happens successive months. So I guess it teaches you a couple things. One, you can just see your overall retention for those user cohorts. Are the people coming in staying in? Because that's ultimately what you want. You want people getting so much value from this thing, they keep coming back. But you can also see, okay, well, in December, we released some new features, and that second month retention jumped to 83%. So whatever we did in December, it worked. People are more likely to come back. So you can see the effect of product changes by looking up and down on this chart, and you can run experiments to see if those things have an ultimate effect on retention. Segmentation is super valuable. I just talked about segmenting on role for NPS by looking at hygienists, but you could be segmenting on company size. It could be location. You're in Europe. Every country's a little bespoke entity. It's maybe folks in France are really upset, or people in Germany don't like certain features. That's a great way to get an insight. Segment by geography, and you'll learn something. Industry's another bit. Free versus paid. There's a lot of ways you can actually segment and slice and dice data to start seeing trends. Because a huge number that's encompassed of a full aggregation, it hides the good bits. You want to break it out into subsegments to start seeing, wow, this one jumped up 10x. This one dropped 10x. That's how you start getting insights. Running experiments. I love experiments. This is a canvas. This is the opportunity to document an experiment. I encourage you, if you don't know the answer to a question, run an experiment. Run a quick test. You can run A/B tests. You can run simple split tests. You can run all sorts of interesting tests. I won't go through this. I could do a whole testing talk if I wanted to, but there's a lot of opportunities here. That's a great way to get data in the absence of data if you want to do so. Interviewing customers. Get on the phone and ask them. This is Calendly. They do a ton of work. They use their own product, of course, to schedule it. Calendly, obvious. But what workflow does it look like? What preceded it? How are you doing it? It's a great way to get insights. Again, get on the phone and talk to these customers. And then last but not least, watch them. This is watching sessions. In the olden days, we used to sit, that's a very dated comment, but we used to sit behind double-sided windows and watch users use products. I've done it many times. We used to sit next to them and watch them. We called think aloud studies, early in my career. Now you can just go online and watch them use their software yourself. So it's much more efficient than flying somewhere or having a lab, probably cheaper as well. But this is a great way to just see what's going on, to get empathy for your customers, and that empathy leads to insights. When you see, this classic picture's worth 1,000 words, when you watch someone struggle, it's damn, we got to fix that. When you see it in a chart, you don't feel it quite as much, but when you watch it, you're going to make that change. So look, hopefully you got a lot of great examples on how product-led organizations can use data to inspire informed decisions. And I challenge you tonight, like I gave you, again, like a wealth of examples, like how can you use data to improve your CX? It could be qual, it could be quant, but what can you be doing to improve it? I'll close on one last quick story. Okta is one of our customers, a security software company, and they used data to really hone in their trial experience. They started seeing where people drop off during trials to almost automate the trial experience for their end users. That led to like higher conversion rates and honestly lower cost of sales because their salespeople didn't have to get involved. It was a completely automated process just through metrics and measurement, understanding what people were doing. It's a great example of how data can inform your go-to-market. And particularly the top end of the funnel. So with that, I think I'm at time, but if you want more, feel free to use the QR code, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Todd. This was amazing. A quick QR code for those who haven't managed to scan it before. Excellent. Great. So our next speaker is Eloise, who's a CPO at Zoa, and she will talk to us about the other side of the coin, what to do when there is not enough data or when there is no data at all. So please welcome Eloise on stage.
Cool. So hey, I'm Eloise. I'm CPO at Zoa, which is a climate tech startup. And one of my first thoughts when the ProductTank team reached out and said, hey, we're doing this topic on leveraging data, is as product people, we often talk about a particular type of data, which is user data. How are users using your product? Have they adopted your feature yet? Can you run an A/B experiment to see which option you should offer? But what happens when you're doing a 0-to-1 product? And what happens when you don't have users yet? And you're sitting there thinking, I don't actually have all of that data, so how am I supposed to make good product decisions? So Zoa is on a mission to help get us to net zero faster. So we're looking to help solve the climate crisis. And one of the really important parts of getting us to net zero is helping residential homes electrify. So I might ask a variant on the Tesla question. So like, how many of you have an electric vehicle, a heat pump, a solar panel, or a battery in your home? Okay, cool. We've got quite a few there. So this room is full of probably like a fair amount of disposable income and probably a fair amount of people who really care about the climate crisis. So that's like not enough. We need most people electrifying their homes. And the reason people don't do that is because it's really hard. It's hard to find out which devices you should buy, which ones are right for you, to find someone to go and install those devices. Once you put them in your homes, they don't work well together. You're going to have 10 different apps where you're trying to manage these things. There isn't really a good, slick consumer experience that just works for people. So if you're an early adopter, you might struggle through that. But if you're a standard person who just kind of cares and is thinking about whether they get a gas boiler instead of a heat pump, you're probably going to go for the known option and get a gas boiler. So these devices are increasing, adoption is increasing, but it's not fast enough. And it's a problem that lots of people want to solve. So your energy retailer wants to solve this. You might have seen, depending on who you have providing energy in your home, people starting to advertise solar panels, heat pumps more. And it's a problem that installers want to help solve because they obviously want to be installing more devices in homes. So what we do at Zoa is we help solve this problem. So it's hard to join up these devices. It's hard to connect to them. It's hard to control them. And what we do is we offer a platform for these energy companies so that they can connect devices, so that they can optimize homes automatically. So you as someone living in that home isn't trying to manually discharge your battery to do things. We monitor the devices so they can see what's working, what's not working, and what's happening at scale. And we help these businesses grow by creating great business cases around, helping you get your next device, or tapping into things like flexibility opportunities. So what this allows them to do is offer their customers a single experience where all of your devices can be joined up and just work using AI-powered optimization. We lower energy bills, so you can get up to £300 a year extra savings, and we allow them to connect into things like flexibility markets. So why am I telling you this? So Zoa has a really interesting origin. So I joined back in August as part of a shift that the team were making from being the product and tech team behind Bulb, who were one of the fastest growing companies in Europe. They had 1.7 million customers, energy company across multiple markets, and they went out of business in the energy crisis. But the product and tech team, who really care about solving a lot of problems in the energy space, spun out as this company saying, how can we help other energy companies with all of the product, all of the data that we have, all of the technology that we have? How can we help other companies solve some of the problems in this space? So I joined as part of the transition from B2C to a B2B company, and that poses a really interesting challenge for product managers who have been working at Bulb at scale, millions of customers, B2C product, and suddenly they're in this B2B world where we've got no users. And the questions, the problems that you're trying to solve and the types of data that you have, you go from having like lots and lots of data about your users and how that you're using their product, changes dramatically. So what I wanted to talk about is how we, some of the practical things that we're doing at Zoa day to day in our product practice to do this. So product managers have gone from a world where they might be given a well-scoped product question like this: we want this outcome, we need to increase conversion for this thing from 10 to 20%. And they live in a world which I see as like the ideal of product management, where you turn up at your desk and you've got all this qualitative data, you've got all this quantitative data, and you're looking at what users are doing, and you're bringing in data sources from different areas and then presenting your argument, forming your hypothesis to test and going out and testing that quickly, into a world where someone might come up to you and say, okay, we need to work out how to solve this problem for users in a way that scales. We need millions of users. We need to go from naught to lots of revenue very, very quickly. And that's a really exciting place to be as product manager. It can also be a really terrifying place to be, particularly if you come from a world where you've got a lot more data. So how do we go about maximizing our impact as product people for these 0 to 1 products? And how do we use data to do that? So spoiler alert, there is always data. It's just a different type of data, and you might need to use it in a slightly different way. So the first thing that we do is we set the direction with data. So about 4 or 5 months in to my time at Zoa, we dramatically pivoted the product. And one of the first things that we did is sit down and say, okay, where do we need to get to? If each of our teams really only had 3 things that they can measure that would show that they're having impact and impact aligned with our mission, what would those 3 things be? And there's 2 interesting things about this table. I've kind of blanked out the exact metrics, but you can see the types of things we were looking at. One is that we didn't have all the data. So there's some cut off the bottom, but I've got nine numbers on here, and 4 of them we didn't know. So we had no way of collecting that data. And that's fine. Because at this stage, what we were looking to do is set the direction. The second thing that's interesting is these numbers were fairly useless to us. So we're in the stage where we had 1 or 2 customers. And what that meant is the data that we were getting through wasn't representative of the types of customers we wanted to serve at scale. But what this did allow us to do is align as a product team, align with the rest of the business about where we are heading with this and where we thought success lay. It also allowed us to start building in data-driven practices right from the start. So how did we get there? We've got an amazing data analyst who ran a workshop with all of our product people, asking the question, what is success? What is success? What's failure? What could we measure? What should we measure? And then looking at like, okay, well, how do we practically measure those things? And then the teams went and did the legwork to see what can we measure now? What data do we have? What would we have to put in place to measure some of these metrics in the future? The second thing I want to talk about is qualitative data. So I think sometimes qualitative data is more scary than quantitative data. I think because it's more ambiguous, it's a bit messier, sometimes it's hard to get hold of. But really, if you're in the 0 to 1 space, you need to be using qualitative data daily. And it comes from all sorts of different places. So when I joined in August, one of the first things that I did was introduce Product Board as our road mapping tool. And this is the shot of our insights page in Product Board. So what happened between August and December is everybody was enthusiastic about the tool. They went and added loads of qualitative insights from our CRM, from conversations they were having, from user research. And then you can see a dramatic drop-off from January into now, where I don't think there have been any new insights recently. And what I see quite a lot in teams is when you start thinking about qualitative data is you think, okay, well, we need to share organizational knowledge. We need a way to store this qualitative data. Once we've got enough insights, we're going to go and do this piece of analysis. And often in a 0-to-1 space, there's a few challenges with that. One, you don't have time to go and run long user research studies, so you're really looking to move fast. And the second thing is that I've just forgotten. So you're really the insights in here, the data in them is really useful, but the actual thing that we were doing here was not. What we found much more useful is using this framework that I quite like. It's cut off the bottom, but it's from the Continuous Discovery Habits book, which has quite a lot of useful things in, so I'd recommend. Which is just taking a snapshot of the conversations you have. So when you interview a customer, perhaps you are doing user research and you've got these different interviews you're doing. Perhaps you're just in a sales call and it's with a prospective customer. Just capture those insights and share them with the organization. So the important thing is that everyone in the organization has the knowledge that you're learning day to day, because what you learn will change from month to month, week to week. Every day you'll learn something new and you'll constantly be kind of adapting and pivoting to the things that you learn. So the important thing is you capture that knowledge and you share it quickly, at least in the start. As you grow and scale, you can start tackling other problems about how do we manage our organizational knowledge with hundreds or thousands of people. The third thing I want to talk about is testing two things. So a common thing that we talk about when we talk about data as product managers is things like A/B testing to see what you should build. If a product manager came to me and said, we'd really like to build 2 versions of this feature and see which performs best, I would say, we don't have time to do that. So can you please go away and find a quicker way to decide which one to build? And we do this all the time in different ways. So these 2 mock-ups, this was to make quite a big decision about which bet we made for 2 new product areas. So what we did was we ran design sprints. We just ran them for a week. We mocked out the product, validated, tried to understand some of the most important risks, particularly technical risks. And then we took these to customers and prospects and understood what is the value of this product for you? Is this something you would actually buy? And really critically, would you buy it now? So is this a problem that we as Zoa should be solving for you right now? And the thing that we've learnt is both of these things, so one is about flex and one is about heat optimization, are really high value for our customers and our prospects. One of them is more timely. So one of them has a market need now and one of them can wait. And that's a really important insight for us as a business. It's a critical insight for us as a business, and we learnt it very, very quickly. There are lots of ways you can use this principle of testing 2 things. So this is a piece of work, one of the outputs from a piece of work one of the product managers was doing, and they were looking to make a decision about how they go out and develop a particular product. And they wanted to make this decision with the exec team's buy-in. So what they did was they said, okay, we've got these 2 options, super high level. This is the analysis that I've done. This is how the options compare. This is my recommendation. And then we were able to make a decision with that PM, with the exec team, very quickly at the right level for the decision that we're making. So you might not have all of the data, but you do have some things you can use, and often using a comparison helps you surface the important parts of that decision. But if there's one thing that I want to leave you with, and really the thing that I'm trying to help product managers do, is that data won't tell you the answer, but it will sharpen your product intuition. So throughout your career as a product manager, you basically want to get better at figuring out what bet should I make, how should I make that bet, and how can I test it as quickly as possible, particularly if you're in the 0 to 1 space, but really if you're working on any product. And if you're able to go and gather these different types of data from different places and use them and accept that you might not have all of the data, but do that thing where you develop your product intuition, then you're going to be in a pretty good place to tackle 0 to 1 products. Thank you very much.
Can I have the clicker? Thank you. Thank you so much, Eloise. We are moving on to our last but not least speaker. Eugenio is a group product manager at Vodafone, and he will share some of the most interesting use cases of how Vodafone customers use the IoT data in their day-to-day life. So please welcome Eugenio.
Thank you. Let's see if this works. Works great. I tend to use my hand a lot, being Italian, so it's going to be like this today. Eloise, thank you for what you just said right now, because honestly, that was my journey with my product, 0 to 1, especially because, as we will see now, like kind of big, actually. Sorry, I'm just going to be here. Yeah, so I work in Vodafone IoT, and how many of you have been in a car in the last 24 hours? Nobody? Okay. Perfect. And how many of you have smart meters at home? Fantastic. All of you are indirectly our customers. True story. So basically, what is Vodafone IoT? So it used to be a division of Vodafone, and now is actually a standalone company. We connect effectively the most number of devices all over the world, mostly industrial devices. So cars, trucks, buses, smart meters, healthcare devices, and also payment terminals. So just about wherever you go in the cities or in any sort of industrial settings you are or interact directly, we are there. We provide connectivity, but actually more than that. And but what that actually also mean is every time that SIM card in that device is alive, that's something. So let's say you go to a restaurant, you pay, or you go on an Uber and that is connected. Every single moment that SIM card connects to a network is a data point for us. And so far we've been talking about, in general, devices and data in those devices, but actually a lot of data is in the network and is actually in the SIM. And so, keep going back. And so as part of my product that I manage, which is a B2B data analytics product / platform for our B2B customers, when we started building our product, we said, what kind of data and insights can we generate with all that data, all those data points that those SIMs that we connect for our customers do? And that journey literally lasted years, because we started with the discovery, as you said, a lot of customer calls and a lot of qualitative data. And then we realized once we launched it, actually there's a lot of value that data from SIM cards can generate. What you see here is one of our customers, courtesy of Copilot AI for the pictures. But basically, these customers, they connect tens of thousands of tractors, smart tractors all over the world. They sell those tractors to different distributors. And these distributors, they sell and use those tractors, connected tractors, all over the world. Now, the thing is with telecommunications is that it's very regulated. You can't have devices roaming all over the world just like you can't with your phone. What happens, though, is if a device gets stuck in a country where it shouldn't be, then the local regulator effectively blocks that device. Now, what that means is for these customers, all of a sudden, because the local distributor, they send the devices in countries for too long, longer than the roaming regulation, those devices stop working. So all of a sudden, you got a company in Turkey, a company in Brazil, a company in India that cannot use that device. It's stuck. And so what they had to do, they had to literally send a new device from Germany, replace the old head unit, and that eventually that case was costing around 30,000 per device. So imagine once you have 10,000 devices, how many problems you have to solve. And we were able to actually solve it because we were able to let them know, hey, you have this number of devices in these countries for too long. So if you adapt these data that we have in the product that we provide you with, you're able to avoid that. Another example, one of my favorite, is about payment terminals. So probably if you've been in a restaurant or if you've been in a coffee shop, so you pay with your card and off you go. Now, when customers come to us and buy connectivity, they tend to buy in bundles based on what they need. Just like you have infinity, unlimited bundle for your phone, but when it comes to B2B, you tend to have a bit more restrictions because it depends on your use case, on what you're trying to address with your customers and so on. And when they buy bundles, they have specific amounts of, say, SMS or specific amount of voice calls and data usage, because effectively what you're going to be doing is just paying on the terminals. In this case, the interesting thing was that they realized that they had zero visibility of their devices. This is a leading payment terminals in Europe. They have millions of devices with one of our competitors. Zero visibility. They don't know where it was. They don't know what the device was doing. Completely blind. What happened was that on a particular month and quarter, their bill, basically what their own providers were charging them, was completely out of the ballpark. They actually were around 300K, 400K of extra bill, and they had no idea. What we were doing, we ran a simulation. We actually proved to them, look, if you come to us, given that ultimately your competitors doesn't have those capabilities, we are able to show you that what those devices are doing. And what was actually happening was that those merchants, they were putting the SIM card into a phone and then going up all over Europe and traveling and downloading data. And they didn't know. They had completely no idea. And that's the sort of things that we are able to start investigating using IoT data. So effectively, what your SIM card is doing in the device. The last one, another of my favorite, coffee machines. I had no idea. This is literally blew my mind. These customers, real customers that we were working with, they actually lease coffee machines to coffee shops and restaurants. Now, so far so good, right? The problem was that someone tipped them and say, I think you have a problem because I see your coffee machines online being released or sold. Do you know that? Zero visibility. So effectively what was happening is you have a small shops and you lease the coffee machine because you're not going to buy it because you don't know what your seasonality is and so on. And they were reselling or subletting those machines to other shops whenever they were not using it. Now, the problem with that is that in the contract that they had with their own users, so these customers of ours, they have a clause that says you can't use it. You can't do that. Like we lease the machine to you because it's our property for you to use. And so what we were able to do is using cell IDs, so effectively where the SIM card connected on the towers, we were able to say, look, your devices are here. Usually the history of those devices of being located is in the specific quadrants, in the specific city. Clearly, if it's a coffee machine and is in Rome, and now it's showing in the cell ID or the tower in Milan, clearly something's wrong because a coffee machine isn't supposed to be moving. And so we were actually working with them to address this scenario, to say, look, this is effectively a fraud. Someone is actually going beyond their contractual obligations. And thanks to the IoT data, we're able to plan their sales team accordingly. Because once you have, say, 50, 100 salespeople, you cannot send them to thousands of different places all over the country. It's going to take you forever. And so that's how we actually used the data that all those devices, in this case, and all the other cases, that they generate with the network. There's a lot more. We work across different industries, not only these ones, we go completely all over the world. But it was just like you were saying, is effectively we learned about this not necessarily by looking at what the customer were doing on the platform, but speaking with the customers, a lot of those qualitative conversation that we had. So that's why I said it was really much linked to what we were doing. And that's it from my side.
Thank you so much, Eugenio. We will do the Q&A session now, so just give us a minute. We'll set up the chairs and we'll jump into Q&A session. Make sure to add your questions to the Slido, please, and upvote the ones that you want us to discuss today. So we'll just move the chairs. Okay, excellent. Eloise, we got the first one for you. What data platforms does Zoa use?
All sorts. So we are on cloud, so we use BigQuery and Looker for data. We use Vertex AI. We build a lot of AI stuff. Amplitude for our app. We collect qualitative data in lots of different ways. Any more specific answers you want? Because I could just keep reeling off different types of data.
Todd, what kind of tools do you use to measure data? Do you use Pendo for Pendo product analytics or something else as well?
Yes, we use Pendo primarily for product analytics. We also use Looker and a combination of BigQuery and other tools as well for kind of incorporating more business data. So yeah, those are the primary ones.
So we use AWS. Our product runs on AWS, and then we use a combination of Tableau and Qlik depending on the use case.
Thank you. For Pendo, Todd, can you give us a recent example of where you used Pendo to improve Pendo?
Yeah, Pendo for Pendo, recent example. So yeah, I mean, there's just a ton. So you know, I think each team has their sort of own dashboard that, you know, for a launch, and you know, I think they have kind of their goals, and I think I guess one of the teams that, like I mentioned, we have this like replay product where you can watch people use the software. The replay product team, the one who builds it, their dashboard's all obsessed over what action are people taking from watching it. Like, no one wants to watch a bunch of videos of things. It's a waste of time. So their goal is to have like 10% of all videos you watch take an action. So they've been sort of obsessing over that problem, and you can kind of see their algorithms improve the suggestions, which lead to more actions. So like that's kind of in a way we've been using our product to sort of deliver a better experience.
Thank you. How do you balance between collecting data versus making decisions? When is it enough data? Who wants to take it?
I think you just have to. No, I mean, usually, look, sometimes you're not going to have all the data. So you're going to have to make decisions based on what you hear, what you learn by speaking to people, and sometimes a bit of a leap of faith, especially when it comes to B2B. You don't have all the data. You don't have all the insights. What you do, you try to speak to as many people as possible. And that's how you actually de-risk it.
So my super honest answer to this is the difference between like a good and a great product manager is learning when you've got enough data to make a certain type of decision. And that depends on the scale and impact of the decision. It depends if it's a decision you can reverse or not. And I think as you think about kind of progressing up your product career, like a lot of that ultimately, I think, comes down to like the scope of decision you can make confidently and well. And obviously you're not always going to make the right decision, but making a sensible decision and understanding when you've made the wrong decision is just like such a core thing that you should be thinking about how you develop. So I don't think there's an easy answer to that, apart from practice, and also I think often just give it a go. And if you're kind of new to those types of decisions, use someone else to sense check them. But don't be afraid of making decisions, because ultimately, as a product person, your job is to figure out what should we build that really adds value for our customers, and to make decisions to move that forward. And I think, you know, the people you work with will really appreciate it if you can make timely, good decisions and know when it's like not your decision to make, or whether that's like beyond the level of data that you can either collect or understand or are comfortable with.
That's a great answer. So I can't add too much. So everything she said. The only thing I will add is there's this concept of metrics dysfunction, and dysfunction occurs when you have sort of an incomplete data set data set and are kind of focused sometimes more on vanity metrics than you are on actual metrics that drive root cause. So sometimes incomplete data does lead to bad decisions. So there's a great book on this too. I got to find it. It's an old one. It's a very old book as well. But like they talk about like companies that like HR teams that just measure like interviews, you know, or even hires. You can make a bunch of hires, but if they're the bad hires, like if you all you measure is like time to hire a number, like you may think your recruiting team's amazing, but then you realize like more than half of them leave in like 6 months. They're obviously not amazing. So that's an example of like measuring, like having a bunch of data that's probably not the right data to like see whether you have the outcome. So sometimes data, you know, it's like kind of lies, damn lies and statistics, you know, like sometimes you're looking at data and it's just like absolutely the wrong one to be reflective of the overall outcome you're trying to drive. So just be careful of the data you have. I agree. Like sometimes you're going to make decisions without data. You have to. Don't wait. Sometimes waiting's worse than like waiting. Sometimes waiting's worse than just making a decision without data. Often is, but be careful when you have data that like kind of tells you what you want to hear, or you're measuring the wrong things, because then you should keep searching for the right thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Just one more thing to add. Particularly when you're in a new space or an ambiguous space or you're panicking, the other thing I'd suggest is like making sure, like be the person who leads the decision. So be the person who says, okay, I've got this data. Hopefully you've made the decision about the right data and you know what data you don't have as well. And make the decision recommendation, but don't be afraid to like pull other people into the room who might have different context or a different perspective, particularly when you're getting used to that. So one thing that we do is like join up, think about ways that we connect like the exec team or the commercial team with the product managers for particular types of decisions, just to make sure you know, you're not like completely missing something that's come through the door last week that's going to dramatically change that decision.
Thank you. Next one is, how do you resolve situations where different stakeholders like different collecting and conflicting different data?
Think about this one.
Do you want to start with it? Know your stakeholders is a good place to start. So, you know, I think the other thing you should be doing as a product manager is understanding how the organization generally makes decisions, particularly when you're like coming in new or you're like stepping up to the next level. So, like, figure out realistically how are decisions made in this organization, whose influences them, what data points are they using. And like that is data as well, like that goes into your decision making. Like get the data from the room you're sitting in. And try and uncover that, and then bring that data together and try and like build as far as you can like an unbiased narrative and take into account the different sources that people are using, and make a strong decision. I think you should always have kind of strong opinions, and then if you're proven wrong, then you should change that opinion.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, obviously you have people bringing in competing data, trying to make a decision. I guess the first one is not all data is created equal. Like very often, and look, one you know, because I'll pick on sales for a little bit. No, like these are all product people, I think, in the room, not salespeople. But often sales will come into a room and their data will be the last conversation they had with a customer like 3 hours earlier. And they're like, oh, I was just talking to such and such customer and they said blah, blah, blah. And that is data. It is one piece of qualitative data against potentially thousands of pieces of other data. And they may be right. They may be right. So I guess the first thing you can do if you're trying to build relationships with these stakeholders, which I agree is important, is try to have empathy for why they're bringing this up. They obviously care about this one customer or they wouldn't be mentioning it to you. Maybe it's a big one, maybe it's an important one, but they're bringing it up. So try to have empathy and try to say, well, that's great. Our data maybe says other things. Why don't we try to validate and see if more customers share the same sentiment? Because maybe there is something there. So I think having empathy for your colleagues, your other stakeholders, try to be the arbiter of truth. Try to get to the answer. Maybe they are right. One of the things that I like to believe when I'm trying to make a decision and when everyone in the room is sort of agreeing with me, it's like we are probably missing something. How do we appoint someone in the room to sort of be the cynic who is searching for the one thing that we are missing Because if everyone just agrees so easily on this decision, like it is very possible it's the wrong one. And that's scary. It's scary when you have like the concept of groupthink, or you have everyone like you have momentum or inertia heading this one direction. So I think it's healthy to have a real debate and look at alternative perspectives and different data sets, and ultimately leads to better decisions. So
I would agree. I mean, when I look at my role and the sort of business that we're in, I tend to have conflicted data all the time because I deliver a feature to, say, one verticals and people are happy. Then the next vertical, they're not. They go, no, but you're late, or that doesn't work. I tend to be a bit softer in the sense that I let everybody else give me as much information as possible, and then trying to find what is actually the truth. Because of course, especially when it comes to B2B sales, there's always an incentive to make your version of the truth more important than the other, because that drives a roadmap, that drives investment, and so on. And so in my way, I try to listen to everybody, because of course that goes on hand in hand with building a bit of your network as well, and managing stakeholders. But getting as much data as possible, listening to people, and then knowing when you more or less have to draw a line, I think so far has worked well. Ultimately, you're not going to please everybody. And I know sometimes I have to push things back in roadmap because I just can't. And sometimes, you're gonna get emails all the time, phone calls, or you're late, or it doesn't work, and you didn't listen to me. It's not that I didn't. I did, but I have to make calls, and sometimes those are painful to make, but you got to make them.
We got an AI question. Has AI helped you improve your data usage? And if yes, then how? Who wants to take it?
Yes, because I can now put long articles into Gen AI and it summarizes it for me, so I don't have to read it. So that's been really helpful, particularly for competitor analysis, looking at the market. Beyond that, most of the ways we use AI are in the actual product. And I mean, there's lots of interesting things we could talk about, but maybe I won't talk about them. But I think there are some really interesting things around making data-driven decisions as like a product person, working with a data science team and working with an engineering team, because often like data scientists work in quite a different way. They might say something like, yeah, cool, we can definitely do this. We'll go away and do a 6-month research project, and then we'll see how good the model is. And as a product person, that's like quite difficult. You're not going to be able to make a very quick data-driven decision based on that. So like understanding how you work with data scientists, I think is less well understood than working with engineers. So just go, and there's lots of kind of ways you can shorten that time and get to some of those like quick technical validation points a bit quicker. I answered the question in a slightly different way, but.
no, I think +1 to some of those things as well. And yes, I think in my talk, I talked a little bit of the difference between obviously quantitative information and qualitative information. Obviously, these LLMs are amazing for processing large quantities of qualitative information. So if you have a ton of survey results and you want to summarize it, or even like attach themes to it, yes, we do that a lot now, and it works really, really, really well. And it could be large amounts of unstructured qualitative data, but if you want to throw an LLM at call recordings and find out what are the handful of feature requests people are asking for on these calls, it's a pretty good solution to those sorts of problems. So yeah, I think that really does help gather data from qualitative information for products. And then yes, and then on the product side, we are leveraging kind of what people would classify as more traditional machine learning to deliver insights to customers based on their data and their usage and all sorts of things like that. And yeah, I think it's going to be ultimately game-changing for how people experience products, because I think a lot of products are good at just giving you the raw tools to like go find the answers that you may have. But I think the future of a lot of our products are like not requiring our users to do a bunch of digging and spelunking and trying to find it, but like surfacing, hey, go take a look at these 3 things, because these 3 things are things that are going to have to deliver the greatest impact on your business or your life or whoever your users are, whatever you're serving in terms of your user base. I think the technology is really good at that.
Yeah, in our case, so the product has already a machine learning side. So it is embedded in the product as a way for customer to make sense of data. So in a way, we started the journey in that sense. Right now with GenAI, just like Ilva said, we use it mostly for summarizing documents or checking codes as well, because that helps speed up the process for our data science teams. To organize API planning, we do that as well, because there's a lot of documents, a lot of post-its, digital post-its. And one of the things that we wanted to do then is finding a way to embed AI not only for our customers to use the data, but for them to use the product better. Now, we don't know yet what that will look like without sounding back to GenAI, but that's what we are thinking about.
Cool, thank you. We got a question about which data analysis skills are important for product managers, in your opinion. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm thinking. Because, data analysis skills from a technical standpoint or from a, I don't know who asked this question, but look, for me, I can tell you what critical thinking in general is. Taking AI aside for a second, just all the technical and coding and whatnot, take it aside. For me, critical thinking is something I have to practice a lot. I know it sounds cliche, but that's not going to go away anytime soon. The ability to summarize information, because actually right now we are at a phase where, especially my role, there's a lot of information, a lot of data. You got to make a lot of decisions fast. So the ability to make sense of a lot of data in a simple way is what I think you're going to find useful, and not only for planning your PI, that'd be great, and planning what to do, but actually how to function as a product manager. Is how do you make decisions? How do you make sense of what people telling you? So for me, I would say double down on that, because it's going to be useful. Then you can add all the extra fancy tools and everything that you find online. But as a starting point, how you can process all the information, the vast information you have at your disposal, so that you're a bit more comfortable with the uncertainties.
I think it depends what product you're working on, what you actually have to do as a product manager. So if you work for a large organization, you might be hands-on with SQL, and you need to do that as part of your role. You might have a data analyst or a product analyst. If you're in an early stage organization, you might have to do everything. So really, I think being able to talk to experts and learn new skills is always really important. As a product manager, you probably want to work on different types of products. If you work on something like an app, then you need to understand app analytics. If you then go to work on an API product, you need to understand how people are using your APIs. So there are some fundamental core skills, and using some of the tools, having at least some experience of using different types of tools is always useful. But I think just be prepared to try and get hands-on and learn these things. I think now, if you don't understand the basics of machine learning, that can be a limitation as a product person. So at least understand enough to have a sensible conversation with a data scientist, and not just be like, okay, you tell me what you're going to do, and then we'll do that, is really important from a kind of data point of view.
Yeah, of course it depends. If you work on an analytics product, you probably should know it really, really well, because you should be a subject matter expert. But yeah, honestly, only things I'll add, obviously be curious, question data. I think curiosity is something that's often overlooked. And look, it's hard to be a product manager. A lot of things you got to know. So do I think you need to be a data scientist or an expert? No. Do I think you need to know SQL? Plenty of professional, good don't. So I don't think you need it. But no difference between a mean and a median. This a very, very basics. College statistics is probably enough. In terms of what to need to know about data to be successful as a product manager. There's plenty of other things you need to be good at. So.
Cool, thank you. Todd, we have a question from someone about the color of your Tesla, but maybe you could ask that in person. So we'll take 2 last questions. Can you please explain the process you use, qualitative data in a daily basis for your product?
Yeah, I'll go first. A lot of meetings, a lot of calls with a lot of people on a daily/weekly basis. So the main stakeholders that I work with primarily are sales, solution architects. So on a sales, you have the specialist for the solutions, the account managers. Then you have the solution architects that tend to be design the solution for customers. And then you have the service sales. So for me, those are the main ones I speak to on a, if it's not every day, it's at least once every 2 days. Then, of course, I would go the next level up. Usually tends to be the head of regions, because they give me a different perspective compared to those that are trying to sell products in the market, and that gives me an understanding of what is important, what is not important, because otherwise everything is important. And then, of course, directly back into my own squad, because they can tell me what's happening with the product, and that helps me as well then engage in the conversation with the rest of the stakeholders. So for me, mostly is sales, solution architects, head of the regions, and then product people / the technology side.
Sure. No, I'll let you go first.
Sure, I can go. So I'm trying to not make it like a complete line, just mix up a little. We use it in lots of different ways, and each PM uses it in different ways with their team, right? Because each team is different, each product person is different. The things that I care about are product people talking to customers at least once a week. I would love it to be more frequent than that, but that's about the right amount for us, considering that we're B2B, which means you often have fewer users to go out and reach out to. And it also often means that they're sitting in a sales call, which I think is just like a really important thing to acknowledge, that as a product manager, you have to be good at getting insights out of a sales call, where you can't jump in and be like, oh, let me ask you this completely hypothetical question, because your sales team are going to be quite pissed off quite quickly and not invite you. So gathering insights, being there firsthand to hear these things. Sharing that data in different ways, depending on what we're trying to find out at the time. So like, it might be that they're doing a particular discovery piece or a particular design sprint around something where they want to go out and talk to lots of people at one time. Or it might be that they're doing like taking a more continuous approach, where they're saying, like, okay, what's the thing that we've learned from this next customer? Or what's like, can we work with the sales team to go out and ask like this set of questions to lots of different people? So really just like being flexible about the problem we're trying to solve. And one thing that I'm working on at the moment is making sure we've got enough visibility around those insights. So I mentioned in my talk, like making sure you're sharing insights regularly and often. But one thing that's very, very common in all organizations is you get like a disconnect between the people who have sat in the room. I think you spoke about this in your talk, like there's no substitute for like hearing it firsthand. Like if you really see someone like be cross about something in your product, you're really going to remember it. So how do we, like in a very fast moving space, make sure that the engineers feel have a really good intuitive sense, as well as the product person, about what customers actually need. And that's a really actually quite difficult thing to do, because you can't have everyone sitting in these calls. So you've got to, I think, be a bit creative about the ways that you share those insights and do different things to mix it up as well.
Thank you for that. I had lost my answer when it came to me, so I regained it. So and I have a black Tesla, just for the record. So pretty boring. But look, I think qualitative data, we use it. We do use it every single day. So like the first example, very simple example, is we do use Net Promoter Score. We have a channel in Slack. Every single solitary answer goes in there. And there's a thread that emerges. It could be like a really happy thread. It could be a very sad thread. It, of course, depends on what the data is, and not everyone leaves like a qualitative description, but it's really nice when they do, because then we can comment on it and take action. And there's often a follow-up, like, hey, I'll take this, I'll reach out, I'll clarify. So that's one way that, I mean, it's action. It's daily. Another one, similar example, and it kind of like feeds into a Slack channel, is like our analytics team, the folks that own product analytics for our customers, have a sort of query against Gong, which is our call recording system for sales. And every time someone mentions analytics on a call, it feeds a Slack channel, and they go listen to those calls where analytics is mentioned. And it's a way just to stay close to the pulse of your particular product area or feature area that you're passionate around, and that creates more threads and more. Hey, go listen to this, and like people get mentioned in, and like again, it creates action and activities. Those are two really good examples. We do a lot of micro surveys and polls. As I mentioned, we have dashboards, and people release new features. People try new features. We poll them. Hey, what did you think of this thing we just released? And you'll get really good feedback. Hey, I liked it, but I really would have wished I've seen this or that, what have you. So these little micro surveys in the product, we're pretty heavy users of them. And we have now AI summaries of these micro surveys, which would give you a really nice synopsis of what people are asking about these new releases. So that's a pretty frequent thing as well. And then, we talked a little bit about watching people use the product, like snippets. You can share a clip and send it to your friends, or your engineering team, and saying, hey, this looks painful. Like, why did we force the users to like click a bazillion times on this thing? Or why did we present this? And like the teams that, like, we have a growth team. Some of you may have growth teams that focus on like conversion or free to paid conversion or other sort of like growthy type things. Our growth teams are heavy users of that sort of technology. They obsess over watching users use products because they want to like tweak those dials and like run those experiments to see what actually works. So they're pretty heavy users of that. Because like if someone gets stuck in a checkout flow or something like that, we want to sort of see what actually happened to the end user. So there's, tons of opportunities to use Qual. So.
I've actually got a hypothesis that I haven't been able to test at scale, which is that I think particularly if you're in a B2B business, one of the most powerful things you can do with qualitative data is put a direct quote. Like if you put a quote marks around something and you take like someone's words and share that on Slack, I think you get dramatically like more impact with that thing than if you do like, we did this research and we found out these things. So if anyone wants to test that for me, like this week, or in the next few weeks, and just like take a quote from something you hear, put it on Slack and see what impact you get, and then let me know how it goes. That would actually be really useful because I need more data points to convince people this is a good thing to do. Or not a good thing to do.
I can tell you it's a good thing to do. We do it.
Cool, excellent, thank you. We'll take the last question for today. If you could each share one unexpected thing that data has helped you reveal, or any insight that it has helped you come up with. Give you a minute to think.
Any insights, unexpected insights?
Yeah.
It's a couple times when I'm looking at data myself is you see outliers. And I'm a big believer that sometimes like the true insights that you get from data is in the outliers, like the one extreme number on a chart or the one exception to the rule that then you go interview those customers and figure out what's happening. So one time I was observing someone using some feature in our product. Of course, we built it for a certain intent. This person was using it like hundreds of times more than everyone else in the product. And candidly, 100 times more than we ever expected anyone to use the product. So we're like, why the hell is this person doing it? Like, what are they, like crazy? Like what's going on? And so of course we get on the phone, and we told him he's using this thing like 100 times more than we expected, and 100 times more than anyone else is in the product. Like, there's like, is it breaking for you? Is it not work? Like, and then the person started showing what they were doing, and they were like doing sort of mass exports of a given report because they're trying to get it into a format that they really wanted it. And once we saw the format that they wanted it, we realized that like adding a handful more features like would have absolutely made this person's life so much easier that they would never have to click the button, which is ultimately what they wanted. No one really wanted to click this thing. They sort of had to click this thing. And that's one of those things that if you weren't going around just sort of looking for outliers, people doing things that are just extreme, you wouldn't observe this thing that was like a pretty bad usability problem, which then by fixing, like, delivered instant delight to this end user. And honestly, it was pretty useful for all of our other users as well. They probably hadn't advanced in their adoption of the product to really understand this was an important question to answer yet. She was just a really early adopter. So it's a good example how like you can discover unexpectedly. If you think someone's doing something a lot, it may not be a good thing. It may be a bad thing. More isn't always better. So I think that's sort of the maybe the counterintuitive proposition, more sometimes bad. So kind of like look for those situations.
So yeah, my insight is also about an early adopter actually. So for us to build a great B2B product, we really need to understand how end consumers are electrifying their homes and how they're using these devices. So we do a lot of talking to end consumers. The problem that we have is that a lot of people who have these electrified devices, so EVs, heat pumps, solar panels, batteries, are early adopters, and a lot of them are so enthusiastic about the technology. And you find people doing all sorts of hacks to try and like optimize the energy in their home and generate savings. So, and we've got people in Zoa who do this as well, who like write their own scripts. They've got like spreadsheets that they report back to their family every month. It's like wild that, you know, they download every single app and then compare them against each other. And obviously, as product people, we're thinking, this isn't really reflective of general behavior. We've got to be careful about like the insights that we take from this. So we were interviewing one such early adopter a few weeks ago, and I kind of always have in my head that these people just love this stuff and they're always going to do this stuff. And they were taking us through like this whole system they built for their solar panel and battery. And then we asked them to talk about their EV, and they said, oh yeah, I don't actually really do anything with my EV because I just use this thing and it just works and it optimizes for me. And I was like, oh, right. So if it just works, then you won't do this. You're doing this to like really solve a problem that you care about, rather than because you really care about going through the process of solving the problem. So I think that was a really useful insight about like the amount of behavioural change we could potentially get with those early adopters, as well as with the wider general consumer.
From my side, a couple things couple insights, two different insights that they always come back to my mind. The first one is maybe because I'm biased, given my product trying to provide different use cases based on data. But the one expected insight I found, especially when working with different customers, is I don't need to have all the use cases. I don't need to have all the data. Sometimes one data point at the right time at the right frequency is all I needed to close a customer. So instead of going there with, I can make you do this, do that, and you actually say, no, it's actually one thing I care about. Everything else is great. It's part of the product, but one thing I care about, and that thing actually helps close the deal. To me, it's still something that goes into my mind. Because, we are busy building a roadmap and delivering and thinking about all the problems, but sometimes not all the things you build are important for the same customers. That's number one. And the second thing was unexpected is the cost of AWS, as in because for us every single SIM is a certain amount of data every month, like actual physical data in cloud. I thought that by scaling we were going to have huge amount of cost, and so certainly cost ramps up, but not as much as I thought, as we actually predicted, which is actually great and something to think about.
Cool, amazing. All right, thank you so much to our amazing speakers for sharing their insights with us today. Do you want to say something?
Thank you. So I was going to hijack the end of this session just a little bit here. So thank you everyone for coming along, and thank you again to our speakers. For those of you who don't know, Irina has been supporting ProductTank for almost 3 years and has been dedicating her time volunteering to help all of the folks like you come together, network, learn from our experts in the field. So we just want to take an opportunity to say a massive thank you for all your support. Today is her last day, and like I said, she's been doing it for close to 3 years. So a massive thank you to you. Really appreciate all your support.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was really expected, so thank you so much, Harsh. Yeah, it's been an amazing 3 years journey, and I've been so lucky to meet so many of you here. And yeah, it's been great, and I'm super happy to having been part of this. So yeah, thank you everyone again for coming today, and we hope to see you in September. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shall we take a picture with the speakers?
Get a picture.
I'll just
Yes.
keep the flowers.
Yeah.